Hello,
Hey,
everyone.
Christina, long time no see.
Alex, I saw your name. I got so excited. So fun. Hello, hello. So good to see you. It's always good to see
You.
people 2 days in a row. We love it. Hey, Rich. Hey, Dorta, Kaylee. Oh, Gunila, so glad you joined. Valerie, Leandra, Brian, Enrique. I want to say Svanelika. I feel like I'm totally butchering your name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but you know what? You're welcome to correct me. So good to see you guys. Aw, Kaylee, so good to see your face. Yay! All right. Well, I'm just going to leave space in case anyone wants to pop in. We do have a lot to cover today. I will say this workshop is pretty robust. So get excited if you're taking notes. I really recommend that you do. But we will have the recording as well, so you can always rewatch anything live on that recording. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and let anyone else in who is in the waiting room to make sure that that is taken care of. Oh, there we go. Let Nikki in here. And then we'll jump in and get started. I'll do a little introduction, some housekeeping items, and then we'll jump in. Hey, Nikki, good to see ya. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to be letting people in. I know it's only a few minutes in, so there might be some more people who are coming, but so good to see you guys. Hello, hello. Yeah, drop your name in the chat, where you're from. Glad to be here if you feel. So cool. I love it. We're all from all over, but I am Christina. I know some of you have seen me in concierge and maybe tickets too, for sure. Oh, Nikki's so cool. Gunilla from Sweden, from Michigan. Yeah, awesome. So cool. So I'm Christina. I'm a support and concierge specialist at Simplero. So my face is kind of everywhere. I wear a lot of hats. My goal with this workshop today is to help all of you feel super confident with the new builder, or at least a little bit more confident than you were before. And then also to just give you some tips and tricks. I'm gonna let Michael in here. To give you some tips and tricks to level up your pages. There are so many little hidden features in the builder. We're not going to get to everything, unfortunately. I wish we could, but I want to just at least hit on and touch on some really helpful ones in order to just help you be able to keep building and not get stuck and find those little tweaks that can actually level up your pages. Hey, Michael, just wanted to say hi. So yeah, and also too, just a reminder that the builder, if you're not super comfortable with it yet, it's okay, because as you start to use it more, it's going to get easier. It's super magical, it's super robust. There's a lot in there, but it just gets a lot easier the more you use it. So that's just a quick reminder. Also, I've done this workshop before a couple times now. So if any of you have watched that replay or joined on those calls, we will be repeating quite a bit of information from there. But I'm adding in a few new things here and there because our tech team just keeps building the builder. And so we want to make sure we're updating you guys on all the little new things that you may not be aware of. Okay, so just a few quick housekeeping reminders. Please try to keep your questions in the chat. If you have any that pop up, keep your mic muted and just drop it in the chat. And then at the end, I'm going to try and save a little space for Q&A. So we may not have a ton of time for it, depending on how much we get through, but I'm going to try and make sure we do. So during that time, when I open the floor for Q&A, you can definitely hit that raise hand emoji. It's under the React tab. Zoom always changes their interface, but it's under the React button. So you should be able to click that. There's a raise hand option, and I'm just going to go through any hands that are raised. If you have another question that comes up, hit that raise hand question again, and we will get to as many questions as we can within the hour. So that's just something to keep in mind, and I'm going to try and monitor that chat as well as I'm going through this. Let's see, and if you don't feel like if there's a question that you didn't get answered, but you really want help with it, go ahead and put in a support ticket. You can email support@simplero.com as well, or do it from your dashboard. We're happy to just keep answering questions, and questions might pop up after we finish this workshop, and you're like, oh, I actually didn't know this or this, and I wish I could have asked this. Drop a support ticket, we'll get back to you there, because our team definitely wants to make sure all your questions are answered as well, and we want to know what questions you're asking. Another quick thing too is that, so the builder is really robust, right? So we're not going to be able to get through every single thing. Silas, my colleague, has actually done a workshop, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat, on the Builder 2.0. So I just want to make sure you guys have that as a resource as well. I'm going to show the functionality of the builder, but obviously can't cover everything. So that workshop is the next best option to getting more help with the builder. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right in. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and we're gonna walk through a couple things. So let me go ahead and find the right screen to share because Zoom has so many options. Okay, can everybody see this? Are we all good? See my screen? Perfect. Okay, so one of the best things about the builder, I built this page and there's a couple things in this page I'm gonna touch on how to do. You'll see here, obviously you can add, actually the reason that this is not playing is because I need to refresh. But there's a video in this background, so you can have a background video that auto loops. You can have like the bottom dividers on your sections can be different shapes and designs. And so that's also something I'm going to show you how to do yourself. Over here, you can have certain elements and columns and sections that overlay other sections. So like you can see her head is kind of going over the section above, little design tweaks that can kind of add dimension to the page. I'll show you how to do that. You can see as I'm scrolling down the page, things are showing up in like a faded, on Canva, I think they call it fade, but it's a way to kind of have the page animate a little bit. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. We do have a feature for that. So a lot of little things like that are going to come up as we walk through this. And then a reminder too that the builder, hey Tarek, good to see you. A reminder too that the builder is, the 2.0 builder is the same for website pages and landing pages, right? So technically we're going to work on a landing page, but a lot of those features, pretty much all of them, are on a website page as well, right? So, and I'm going to show you how to convert a landing page to a website page for a specific use case if you need to as well. So just keep that in mind. If you're working on a website page, it'll be the same process. All right, so we're going to do this in our demo account here. I'm going to go ahead and go to Marketing, Landing Pages, and Forms. And once it loads, there we go. So when you're here, you can click Create New Landing Page. Now, just a quick reminder, you can use our template options for full pages. We have full page template options for landing pages. On the left side of the page, we've got the different types of categories for that. If you're looking for an opt-in or all, pricing, which would be more like a sales, right? So we've got options here. Now, the reason I mention that is because if you, for example, are building out a website page, we are in the process of trying to get some website page templates out for you, but we don't have those released yet. So in the meantime, if you need a template for a website page, which we don't have at the moment, you can create a new landing page with the template that you like, right? And then on the list of landing pages and forms, once you've created it, just select it, choose select action, and then you can move it to the site. Okay, so that's just a quick tip if you want to use a template that we already have that you can edit or add to or delete and make it your own on one of your website pages. And just a quick reminder is that when you do move a landing page and convert it to a site page, right, you're putting it onto a site. When you do that, it's going to take the style guide from that site. So the colors might change depending on what that site style guide is. And now we'll talk about the style guide as well. It's essentially the theme for the page. And it's also going to take the URL of the site as well. So that's just a quick tip. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I wanted to make sure you knew. Can you simplify the difference between a website and landing page? That's such a good question, Valerie. So landing pages are essentially, I like to think of the name to help me remember. It's where they land on the page and the focus is solely whatever that landing page is offering, right? Because it's a standalone page that isn't necessarily linked to a website, right? It's not living on a website, right? And the purpose of that is, let's say when you're sharing a campaign and you want to promote your lead magnet or you want to promote your offer, when you're sharing that link, you probably don't want them to have the option all the time. Maybe you do, but for a certain sales campaign, you might want them to just be able to see all the call to actions on that landing page and not see a top navigation menu with all these other pages they can go to. because you want the focus to be, hey, I really want them to choose to click on that button if they're the right fit, right? So that's kind of what a landing page is meant for. It's more for opt-ins and sales and keeping the sole focus on they land on the page and all they can see is just those calls to action buttons, right? Versus a website page lives on a whole site with a whole bunch of other pages, and each page has that top navigation menu where they can click and go to different pages. Like, oh, I want to go to the about page now. Now I want to go to the page where I can see all the offers. Now I want to go back to the home page, right? So that's a super high level overview of the difference. Great question. Okay. So, oh, and I'm super glad to hear that that was helpful already. I built an updated page. However, there's a kind of thin line sections, which I can show you directly on that page. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right into creating a landing page, but I'm gonna build it from scratch for the purpose of this call. So when you're building a page from scratch, not a template, you'll choose start from blank page. I'm gonna call this Christina's page with an exclamation, create page. Okay, so the moment you create the page, we are going to put this pop-up on the page with different section templates. Just a quick reminder about that is that if you don't want to have to create every single section on the page from scratch, you can choose a template, right? So we've got a whole bunch of different templates for, like you'll see all the different types of templates over here, like a text template or a features section. So if you're moving from our old builder, you remember the features section, right? So we have different templates that kind of cover that. The colors for these templates are pulling from the style guide that this landing page has, which is not very colorful right now. So we'll fix that. But yeah, so that's the first thing. You can choose a template to start with, or you can add a blank section right here, and that allows you to just start building the section from scratch. Okay. So once you're on the page, the first place that I would always start with is the style guide, just to begin. So that as you're building out the page, you can choose from your style guide different design elements, colors, font types that are already preset in the style guide. So it's like the overall theme for the page. So I would always start there first. If you've already built a style guide, quick tip, you can click switch right here. And then you can choose from our list, the list of style guides in your account, to switch it to a style guide that you already have. So that's just another quick tip. I'm going to choose the demo account one, click select. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into the style guide, but I do want to touch on a couple things. So colors, top left, you'll be able to add in your color palette when you click on each of these boxes and you put a hex code, or you can choose from the different colors that are already in your account style guide if you have edited that one. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into the style guides. We do have a style guide workshop that you can also dig into. But once you've added your color palette, you can add some custom colors as well. And then system colors are for system generated pages. So that's not really relevant to the landing page right now. Builder theme. So this is what I want to touch on. So anything that you put in your color palette up here is going to be pulled into the themes for the builder. And you'll see them show up over here to give you an overview of what each section could look like with each of these themes, right? Now, for each of these themes, you get to choose what the background color is, the pre-headline color, the headline color, sub-headline, paragraph, links, right? Forms. And what that means is for every single section on the page, you can literally just choose which theme you want it to use. And then every single element inside that page, whether it's the background color, if you have any headlines, pre-headlines, etc., any links, are all going to pull from these colors automatically. So the goal is that you get to preset like 6 different types of themes that you can then, as you're building your sections, just choose which theme you want to use. Boom, and it adjusts all the colors right there. Now, each of these things can still be customized. Like you can still customize it yourself outside of the style guide. So you can always create something outside of what your style guide is preset to be. And I'll show you how to do that. But this is just a way for you to not have to customize the colors every single time you're creating a section, right? We just want to make it easy. And on the right side under builder styles, you're going to see all the different previews of what those sections can look like with the themes that you preset here. And again, to change those colors, you just click on the box And then you can choose the hex code or adjust it here, right? So you can play around with it. Okay, another quick note on colors. I usually share this every single time because I think it's really helpful. There's different sites that you can use for color palette options just to generate your color palettes. We have one called Coolors. I share this a lot because I know it's been really helpful. I'm gonna go ahead and close out here. You can start the generator and then just click the spacebar on your computer and it generates a whole bunch of color palettes that you could use if you're not sure what colors to use for your brand. And then the hex codes are right down here, so you can copy those. Another one, and I'll drop all three of these in the chat. Another one is, I'm gonna let Anne Ribley in here. Another one is Adobe Color. I had a colleague just share that with me today, but you can drop some like different keywords up here and then it'll generate some different palettes that you can use as inspiration. This is a very specific palette in the green realm, but I think that's just the homepage. But yeah, you can type ocean, wine, moonlight, lucky, red, pink, and it'll generate different types of palettes. And then lastly, not going to touch too long on this, but there is another one that another colleague of mine shared called Colors with 3 S's. This will generate, I just was looking and I was trying, yeah, if you scroll, it just generates random colors down here. Just if you're looking for inspiration. You can also click filter up here and choose like a different type of, like if I'm looking for pastels or warm. Yeah, that's awesome. It'll just give you examples and then you can, grab the hex codes, the RGB, all that stuff, whatever you need, to help give you some inspiration. So just wanted to drop those 3 in the chat real quick so that you have them. Let's see, just do them quickly one by one. So that way these links can probably help you in case you're looking for any inspiration there. I know sometimes I get stuck and I just need to find something that will help me get unstuck on that. So I'm gonna go out of there. Okay, so that's the touch on colors. And then a couple other things. You can also preset the sizing and the family, the font family for your fonts, right? So we've got headlines, paragraphs, subheadlines, pre-headlines. These are the 4 I'm gonna focus on today. And then if you click on a headline, you're going to see the different font families, right? So I get to choose what my headlines font family is going to be. What's the weight going to be? You can choose bold, black, normal. And then you can also play with line height, extra large, large, medium, small. So why is this important? The reason we're giving you these options in the style guide is so that, again, when you're adding fonts to your page, you can just choose small, medium, large, or extra large, and it's going to pull the settings that you've set here, the size that you've chosen. It's going to pull, if there's any line height adjusted, it's going to pull that pixel size, letter spacing. It's going to pull the settings that you put here so that you don't have to adjust those every time you're adding a headline. Right? Now, you can still customize your headlines, and I'm going to show you how to do that, not just headline, any font. You can still customize them outside of the style guide. So that is still going to be possible. Is it possible to use a custom font on just one page, not added into style guide? Yes, Silas mentioned there was an option to add a custom font. Where does that show up? Love it, love the question. Let me cover that really quick. So, good question. In the style guide, you'll see here, we've got these there's actually a couple custom fonts here, and I'll show you where we put them. We've got all these different Google fonts down here. And then if you add any custom fonts, they show up here. Where to add those custom fonts. So if we go back out into the account and you've got a custom font that's not on the list, but you want it to be on the list, you're going to head to the settings gear icon, top right hand corner. Okay. And you're going to go to custom fonts right here. Now you're still going to have to add the files in here. So if you have your files, you can put them in here, give it the name, and then you're going to upload those files. This one has 5 files, I think. So we uploaded the WOFF2 files, right? So you can, if you're buying the font, you'll find that they'll give you all the files that you need, and you can just upload them here and upload each one. Give it the name. Same thing if you were using CSS, that's not really relevant, but give it the name here, name the drop down. That's going to be relevant in the builder, and then you can choose the weight and the style as well. So once you add them in here, Sorry, I'm just letting people in. Once you add your custom fonts in here, you'll go back to your page and you'll be able to see in the style guide that it shows up as a custom font here, right? It also shows up, and I'll touch a little bit more on this stuff later, but if I add a pre-headline and I go here, it should also show up here. Yeah, so, and I'm gonna show you guys what this means, but this little 3 dots essentially means I'm customizing the pre-headline outside of these preset styles that I put in my style guide. So I'm clicking these little 3 dots and I'm just building it from scratch. And it will also show up here, your custom fonts. So that was a really great question. Yeah, no problem, Rich. Thank you for asking that, both you and Kaylee. Awesome. Okay, so let's keep going because there's a lot to cover and I want to get through as many pieces as we can. So, all right, so once you've created your page, you're ready to start. The first place I always recommend going is after you've, customized your style guide, head to the body section. Now that's over here on the right side. You'll see it right at the top. The body, I like to think of it as the skeleton of the page, right? So it's what lives behind your sections, all right? And what that means is you can have a preset theme or preset color behind the rows, the sections, the rows, the columns, and the elements inside your body. And I'm going to go through each of those different aspects of the skeleton in a minute. But the body is behind everything. And so you get to choose what that theme is going to be. And you also get to choose an animation. So if you remember on this page, when you're building this page out and you're moving, or I built this page out and I want to move through the page, you see how everything appears as I'm moving down. The place to find that is under animation. You're going to choose the style that you want to use. I think I used fade, but you could also use slide up, scale, clip, so you can play with that. Choose the animation you want, and then you can choose like slow, medium, or fast. We have these little animal icons to dictate the speed. So that is just an example of how you can add animation. And then again, if you're adding animation, it affects the whole page. So at the moment, we don't have a way to do animation for just one section unless it's a parallax feature, which I'm going to show you what that is. So that is the body. Start with the skeleton. Now within your page, just a quick overview, you might already know this, but we're going to touch on it again, repetition. The components of the 2.0 builder. You've got sections that can have as many rows as you want inside the section. And then the rows can have as many columns as you want inside each row. And inside the columns, you can add elements like pictures or text or a countdown timer, right? So that's, and I'll show you those different elements as well. So that's the high level overview of the skeleton, right? Sections, rows, columns, and then elements inside those columns, all right? So I'm gonna go over here. So let's say I'm adding a section, I've added a section here, there's nothing in it. You'll see here when you hover over each component of the skeleton, hover over the section and you can click on the title section. Now you're going to see all the settings for that section, and we're going to go through these settings, so what they mean. But it's the same thing. The thing I love about the 2.0 builder is that everything is pretty consistent. Like they've built it so that if you figure out how to do one thing, you might be able to figure that out in the row, right? Like the sections in the settings for the section are found by clicking on section, and now here they are. If I click on row, here are all the settings for the row, which are almost the same. And then if I click on column, here are the sections for the column inside that row, which right now there's just one. But if I click the plus icon here, now there's 2, right? So this is just a reminder that it's pretty consistent, and you can click on each one of these things to find the settings, which is important. We're gonna start with section settings, okay? So if I go here, I can choose the theme, right? So it's pulling from the style guide, or I can do a whole new custom theme that has nothing to do with the style guide. Click on each of these things and make it my own. So you can always do that if needed. You can align the different components inside the section this way from there. I want to talk about a couple things. So margin and padding, what's the difference, right? So the margin is inside this section. Let's say this section is full width, but you add some margin around it. Now, the margin is essentially what's around the section. It's the padding that you add around the edges of the section versus padding is padding that you add inside the section. Does that make sense? So that's the difference between margin and padding. Usually what happens is you're going to add margin around a column or a row. Like that makes a little more sense because then the section is behind it. But you could also add margin around a section as well. The row gap, this is a pretty cool feature that we just added, so I want to make sure you guys know about it. If you've got, let's say, one column and I add a headline, so this is my element, and it's inside a row, and now I want to add another row. So let's say I've got this row, I click the plus icon down here to add another row inside that section, and I want it to be one column. So now I've got two different rows. I'm going to click on the row setting here and I'm going to give them different colors so it's easier to see them. So there's one and there's two. Okay, and this one I'm going to give a headline as well. And I'm going to put it in the middle. So now you'll see that there is this thing right here, which I'm super excited about this. I'm so happy that they did this. But essentially, I'm going to go back to the settings sections. So you can see we have this thing called a row gap. So any rows that you have inside this section will have a gap, which is here set to 24, which is the medium size. You can adjust that gap here. And again, if I had a third row, it would have the same amount between both of those rows. So the cool thing is we're trying to make it easier for you to adjust the padding or the gap between your rows without having to do that manually all the time, right? So if I adjust that gap and I'm doing it like this, or I can have nothing, right? That's one option. You can also do it from over here. So you can adjust it by dragging and dropping, and then we're gonna actually choose that option over here with the little three dots. So again, what I like about this is that you can see all of these different settings have the little three dots next to it. And that again is the same, it's consistent. Every time you click the little three dots, you're adjusting that feature manually instead of using the preset sizes, okay? Same thing with the row gap. If I click these little three dots, I can adjust this with this slider, and I can also adjust it over here with the slider here. Okay, so that's the row gap. It's really cool. It's supposed to make your life a little easier. How does this work or show up on mobile devices? Great question. I'm going to go over the mobile device at the end. When you're building a page, how do you typically choose what goes within the same section versus what belongs in a new section? Super good question there, Nikki. So what I usually think of is if I want components of a section to have the similar theme, right? And you'll have to think about this as you're building. Like here, let's say I want them to all have the same section settings. I would probably keep those rows in the same section. And I'm going to show you why. Because let's say this section down here, we've got some other options, right? You can add a background image behind it, right? You can pick an image and you can choose, let's say I give it this background image. I don't know what that's going to look like, but we'll find out. Sometimes it takes a minute to load. Yeah, so that's just an example. It doesn't look great with these colors, but so if I give it a background image, let's say I want all these rows inside of it to live on that image. I'd probably want to keep them all in the same section, right? You'll see here there's this thing called object fit, so you can adjust how the image is showing up in that section. The more technical reasons for this are on this little, you can click on see how this property works. I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, you can play with that. And then the same thing, you can add a video instead of an image, and you can make it autoplay or play on hover. You can loop it and you can adjust the fit. So obviously if you want your rows to live on that video, you'd probably want to keep them all in the same section, right? Same down here, you can add a color overlay to the background of that section. So I could make that, yeah. So if I click here, I can adjust the transparency. If I click on that little rainbow. And then if I go like this, that looks a little better. So that's just an example of how you can use the color overlay. But again, going back to your original question, you'd probably want to keep this all in the same section. And then the last thing down here, you can add a bottom divider for sections. So your question is really great because it ties in with what I'm teaching. So here, obviously there's nothing else on the page yet, so that's why this looks that way, but I could probably add something to make it a little bit more robust. There we go. So you'll see here, I can add a bottom divider at the bottom of any section, and I can choose the shape, and I can make it show like this, or I could make it go like this. I could flip it so it goes the other direction. I can, see if I do this one, flip it so it goes that way, right? So you can play with that. You can adjust the width, which will change the amount of Yeah, like the different designs inside. You can change the height if you want to make it a little taller or smaller. The reason I say this, it kind of goes back to your original question. I'm gonna put that back on large. Is that, let's say I want all of these things to be above that bottom divider. I'd probably keep them in that same section, right? And then I would add a new section beneath it. And let's say I add a new section, I'm gonna make it blank. And I want this section, everything inside of it, to have the background with a different color, right? So I like to think of it that way. That usually helps me understand where I want to place my elements and make sure that they're on the section that I want them to be on based on how I'm designing them. Yeah, no problem. That was such a good question. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving forward so we can get through as much as possible in the next 20-25 minutes. So another thing you can do, quick tip, you can drag and drop sections by, I want to make sure I do that slowly. So if you hover over the section on the actual page, you can press and hold on the section and move it down or up, okay? And put it wherever you want it. Same with rows. If I hover over a row, I can move that down or up. Columns, same thing, or elements. So if I want to put this headline in that row, boom, I can just drag and drop. You can also do it over here. Again, if you hover over a section or row or column or element, and then you see these little 6 gray dots, you can drag anything you want that way as well. Just so you know that that is also an option. And then again, we've got that element thing here. So now it added a row gap. But so that's just one thing. Another thing too is just a reminder. The row gaps are one way that you can adjust directly on the page. We've also made this easier. I'm so happy about this too, is that around the sections, you can adjust the padding. So I could adjust this section so that the left side has this much padding just by dragging and dropping this little blue thing here with the number. If I do that, I can do it over here. Same thing. Let me go back. We're just so unhinged on this page. These colors are not matching, but it's fine. I can't really get to it now. I have to move over. But yeah, so you can drag and drop any direction. Now on the right side, if I click on the section and I go to the settings, or I click on the section from here, what I can do, you'll see around here, now it's adjusting the padding. It automatically adjusts the settings over here based on what you do, right? So if I move, I put it on 24, and then this one I put on 52. You see how it's automatically adjusting these separate edges? So the edges are different based on how much padding I want. So you don't have to manually go into the settings and adjust it. You can just literally drag and drop the settings directly on the builder, and it just makes it so much easier. You can also choose your padding automatically, small, medium, or large, and it'll just do it for you consistently around the edges so that you don't have to do it manually on each section. But it's always nice to have the option to adjust things manually directly on the builder. Every time I find having that option helps. Another thing that you can do with sections is you can adjust the width. And this is also a setting for rows, okay? So on the right side here, this section is full width. I could make it medium. Now, do you see what happens when I do that? It's living on the color that you chose for the body, right? Because sections are above the body, essentially. So that color will show up behind your section if you make the section smaller or, narrower than full width. The other thing is rows. So if I click on this row, for example, right here, and I adjust the width to be medium, now you'll see it's living on that section, but I'm making the box smaller, which can be really helpful. Again, if I click those little 3 dots, then I can adjust it myself with a slider. So that's just a quick reminder there. Okay, adjust width, change theme colors. We already talked about that. Background colors, images, or videos. We're just cruising through. We've already talked about that. Now, borders and corners. This is another cool feature. So let's say I want to give a border around this box, this headline, or this row, let's say. And I want to give it a border. I can click on the row settings, and over here you're going to see the border right here. So if I click border 1, 2, 3, these 1, 2, and 3 options are pulling from the style guide. So if you remember, in the style guide, you have the option to edit borders. We didn't talk about buttons, borders, or shadows as much. So we do have some workshops on that. I will touch briefly on buttons. You can customize 3 different styles for your borders, and you'll see what they look like here as a preview. And then you can choose 1, 2, or 3 down here, or you can customize it manually with the little 3 dots as per usual, right? So that's a really great feature. If I had 2 columns, let's say I had another column. So if I hover over the column section and I click plus, you can duplicate the column or you can add a new one next to it. Now we've got 2 columns, right? So now if I hover over these columns, you're gonna see that I can actually give this specific column a border if I want to. Sorry, I am not in the correct space. I need to give it, that's the column gap. I don't know why it's doing that actually. This should only go on the border. Funky. Well, that is supposed to be just on the column, but you know what? I will go ahead and add another one. Might be a bug. Let's see here. Okay, let's give this column a different color. I'll make it black. Oh, it's because it's living on the row, which has... So fun fact, if your row has these colors behind it and you've chosen dark, you can click inherit if you've got a background image. And now you're gonna see that it's inheriting essentially the picture or the color or whatever the background color or image or video is behind it. So whatever the section picture is, which is a picture, now the row is inheriting that. So that was what I needed to do there. Now, if I want this column, I need to add something to it so it's not so lonely. Give it a headline. If I want this column specifically to have a border, now you'll see that doesn't look great, but that's the border. It's living just on the column alone, right? So that is something you can do. You can add it to columns, you can add it to a row, you can add it to a section, you can add it anywhere you want, right? So, and same with corners. If I wanted this column to have, you can't really see it with that border, let me remove the border, to have corners that look like this, I can do that. And I can add an element inside of it. Let's say I want a contact form. That looks interesting, but that is an option, right? So you can make it a box with arrows. You can do all of that. And again, the column itself can have more padding. Looks like it has no padding. So boom, there we go. Now we've got something we really can actually work with. So you can play around with that. You can give corners based on, and then you can also customize the corners here. You can give separate corners. Same thing, just like separate edges, I can just make the left side look like this, right? So that is another option there. We already talked about most of these things. I did want to touch quickly on parallax, and I want to leave time so I can answer Anne's question about the mobile responsiveness. But if I scroll down here, let's say you're on the section, okay? I click on the section settings on the right side, I scroll down, you're gonna see the option, when you add a background image, the parallax option is gonna show up. This is really cool. If you choose fixed, what that's gonna do is it's gonna make it so that and it'll take a minute sometimes to load. I think I need to publish this. Let's see, is that gonna help? No, let me refresh the page. I'm so used to the little things that happen with the builder that it's not even phasing me at this point. Okay, that may be a bug. But so what happens is and I think I have an example of parallax maybe here. Yeah, here. So do you see how this background image here is fixed? And so when I move, you're gonna see how the background stays fixed. That's the fixed parallax effect, right? And it's just a cool design element that we added so that you don't have to use code to do it. So that should be happening with this image. I don't know what's going on there. Sometimes things get wonky when I build really random pages, but essentially, if you're on any section, you can only find it on a section at the moment, you can add that. Now there's also a parallax animated option, which just makes it kind of move a little bit animated wise when you're moving down or up on the page. Oh, actually, I just had a realization. No, okay, never mind. It might still be a bug. I'm just checking. Object fit. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not pulling it. One more thing I'm gonna try. No, okay. Yeah, that might be a bug. But essentially, animated is also another form of parallax that just kind of moves the picture a little bit. It's like animated as they're moving down, but it's not as much as the fixed option does. Okay, so that's just an example there of another element that you can use to kind of spruce up your page. Quick, super quick advanced setting overview. So for sections, rows, elements, columns, etc., you'll see this advanced tab. That's going to allow you to add shadows around any of those things, right? So if I wanted to add a shadow around this column, for example, I can click on advanced and choose one of the shadows I created from my style guide. I don't think they show up very well on this one, unfortunately. So let me see. And it might also be that image that's, I'm seeing it very lightly, but I don't think that's going to help you guys. Let me go to the style guide to show you what those shadows look like. So I created these 3 shadows here. Down here, they're so subtle. That's why. You can see that any sort of column or element that I add the shadow to will have these around them. I can change that here. You can change those settings to make those 3 different types of shadows look that way. And then you can pull from those 3 here, or you can customize it manually here. So you'll have 2 different options. Inset kind of makes it go inward versus default makes it outward. I don't know how to describe that, but it's like the column itself is sticking out and then the shadows behind it. And then I can play with the direction of the shadow, the blur amount, the color of the shadow, right? And sometimes shadows can get a little too, like, people overuse them, but I do think there can be a nice subtle option if you want to play with that as well. And then down here, another advanced setting is you can show certain things conditionally by a tag, a list, a product, a browser, all of that. I'm not going to go too deep into that just because that's a little bit less about design, but that is just something to be aware of. Now, the Z index, I'm going to talk about that. Let me see. I'm going to talk about that when I get to column settings. So let me just talk a little bit about the column settings specifically. So let's click on this column. If I go back to format here, you can see that there's a couple things. One, inside the column, we have an element gap. So again, there's a row gap. So between rows, you can adjust the gap inside a section. You can also adjust the gap between elements inside a column, right? So if I've got this contact form is an element. This headline is an element, right? Anything orange, that orange box is an element. So if I click the S, now it's adjusting the gap between these 2 elements. If I had another element, like another paragraph maybe, it would adjust that here as well. If I make it large, now you'll see it's adjusting that gap. I can also adjust that manually myself here, and it will update the settings accordingly. So that's just something to keep in mind about the element gap. Between sections, so I'm going to give this column its own color so that we can see it better. Say this column will also be pink maybe. So within the different columns, between columns, you can drag and drop here, okay? And then you also have a column gap here. So again, we've added the gap feature everywhere to try and help you not have to mess so much with the padding between everything, right? The column gap is inside the row because those columns live inside the row. So if I click on the row settings, I can adjust that column gap here as well, or do it here. One caveat, if you adjust, so that's the gap here for the padding between the columns. If you're clicking on the little green thing, that's adjusting the size of that particular column. The tricky thing is with the sizing of the column is that we don't have a way yet to switch it back to the size it was originally, which has been heavily requested. Just because if you do slide things up and down and then maybe you go, actually, I just want them all to be the same size again. We're working on a way to get that so that you don't have to manually adjust it or redo the whole section, essentially. So just keep that in mind if you do drag and drop these green things to make particular columns a different size. Gunilla, great to see you. Woohoo! Okay. So I'm going to go back in here. Let me see. What else have we? So Z index. So one thing that I do think is really cool is you can overlay different things over each other. Okay. I'm going to do a whole new section just to make it easier to demonstrate this. Add a blank section here. I'm going to give this section maybe this color. No, sorry, that's the row. Inherit. Okay. Go back to the section. Sometimes you just got to check and see which settings am I clicking on, because sometimes I forget which one I clicked on. This one, I want to give it a different color to make it easier for you guys to see. So let's say I've got 2 columns in this row. And one column, this is just an example of how you can do this. One column has a headline. And that headline, I'm gonna click it, highlight it, and click this little, if you highlight the text that you add, you'll see our little, what you see is what you get editor pop up. I'm gonna center it. And then I'm gonna click on the column and I'm gonna change that so that it's darker so it shows up. And then let's say I am going to press enter. No, actually, I'm gonna add an element beneath it to look a little prettier. Let's make it a subheadline, put it in the middle, boom. And then I'm gonna give the column, click on the column settings here. I'm gonna give that some padding because it didn't have enough. Okay, so let's say I've got this. And then I wanna add a new element. We're gonna go touch super briefly on elements and I click an image. I'm gonna click that image here and I'm gonna choose this photo. For the sake of time, I'm just choosing a random one. Now, when you add an image, you can drag and drop the size here by clicking these little side lines. That's one way to do it directly on the editor. On the right side, you'll see the ability to adjust the width as well, which is the same thing essentially. So I'm gonna drag and drop the size. I'm gonna click on this image here. Now, let's say I want this image to overlay this box. I don't know how else to say that. I want it to kind of go over it. So I can click on the image here. There's a couple ways to do this, but what I would do is I can go down to the alignment and align it to the left just to remove some of that extra space. And also make this a little bit smaller here. And then I'm going to click back on the image and I am going to adjust the margin. So remember, that's the padding around the image or around the element. I'm going to click on separate edges so I can just adjust the margin on one side. And then I'm going to click here and I'm going to move it so it's got less margin on the left. And maybe I want it to go down a little bit. Oops, so that's not going to take it down. Let me go this way. And maybe I want it to have a little bit extra above. So now you see I'm playing around with it. So it's overlaying and moving. A really cool feature, essentially. Now, let's say I want this image or I want this column to be behind this image. So that is where I was playing with the Z index. I noticed I don't really have a technical explanation for this. The team didn't really give me one either. The higher the Z index, that should make it go over what's behind it. So if I'm clicking on the image and I increase the Z index, that will make it go above. I think making it lower will make it disappear, but if I make this, hold on, let me remove the Z index. Again, it's under the Advanced tab. Remove the Z index for the image. I'm gonna go to the column here. I'm going to click Advanced. Now if so if I increase the Z index on the column, that makes it over the image. I don't have a great technical explanation for that, unfortunately, but that is what you can play with if you want to decide what's above or below. I'd love to see, my concern is that I can do your on desktop is how it look on mobile. Mobile. Yes, and I'm definitely going to touch quickly on mobile. Kaylee, I'd love to see the undo feature work a little better on this page builder, Command Z on a Mac, 100%. I think we talked about that. I think you always wondered what that did. Yep. Nikki, happy to shed some light. I also wondered that too. And then when I found it out, I was like, oh, that's helpful. So yeah, so this is just an example of how you can move things and overlay each other. So we are coming up close to the time. I don't want to touch too much on the elements like I normally do. I've touched on elements in previous workshops, so you can definitely go back and review what I talked about there. I talk a little bit more about images, videos. If you click to add an element, remember elements are the orange box, so I can add one here inside a column. Anywhere you want, really. You can choose from all of these options. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do. You can customize your fonts a little bit more nicely. You can add a contact form, an audio file, buttons. So again, the buttons are gonna pull from the style guide. Let me quickly touch on that. So if I add a button here, it looks really funky in this. Go back out here. If I add a button here. So let me add one. I'm gonna add a new row down here. Add an element. Add a button super quickly. It's pulling this GDPR thing because the settings in this account are to add a GDPR option. Now you can turn that off. Click on require GDPR consent. So when you add a button element and you click on it, the button settings will show up. So anytime that you add an element, you'll have to click on that element and you'll see the settings for the element on the right. I've requested that it just automatically populates the settings, but they haven't implemented that yet. So hopefully at some point they will, and it'll just be easier for you guys. But for now, no worries. You just click on the button and you'll see it here. The 3 styles that you customized in your style guide will show up here, and you can click on them to choose what that button is going to look like. or you can customize the button yourself. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. You can make it bigger or smaller. And then over here, you can choose the action on the button. I'm not going to touch on that today. You can give it an icon. So this is something I used to have to do with code in our old builder. But if you want to add an icon to the right, you can click on the icon right toggle, browse icons. And then over here, let's say I want to add a right arrow. That's just an example. You'll see some options. Again, this is fontawesome.com, so they don't have, everything is not all free. So I usually just choose a free one. I don't have a paid. The pro ones are paid. And then if I click on the icon I want to use, you can just click on the HTML. I wouldn't click start using this icon because it takes you a different place. I just click here to copy that code snippet. I go back into the page and I paste it under FA icon. And now you'll see that icon shows up here. So it's literally just clicking to copy it, paste it on the FA. Okay, so I just wanted to cover buttons super briefly. But again, you can go back and watch my previous workshop and get some more information. And Ribley, what's the yellow triangle warning? Super good question, super good point. So in our old builder, if you forget to add a link to a button, we didn't have a way to warn you. And so you could maybe share your page and have no idea that maybe 2 of the links weren't tested and checked and they're just going nowhere, right? So we want to make it easier for you guys. In the back end of the page here, when you're building, if something hasn't been linked to anything yet, like there's nothing linked, we will show this little triangle error and it says no inputs on the page. That just means there's no link on the button yet. So it's meant to help you. You could scan your page and be like, whoops, I forgot to link this button. I see the triangle. And you can click that button and boom, add a link. This one's, the action is an opt-in, which means it's opting into a list, but there's no list selected, right? So I could also click go to, and then that would also show because there's no link added. Where do I want to go to, right? So I kind of have to choose the one that I want. And now that thing disappears, right? So that's a super good question. And thank you for bringing that up. So you'll see that on the pages as needed. So I want to touch super quickly on a couple things, including responsive mode. I know we're almost at time. I'll try and open Q&A in the next few minutes, but really quickly, you can save your sections as a block. So that just means that you can save a section and add it somewhere else, right? On the page or on another page using that same style guide, I believe is the same thing. Or it might not be even the style guide. I have to test it again, but I was able to add it to another page. So you should be able to add it anywhere. But essentially, when you hover over a section, or you can do this for anything. You can do this for a row. You can do this for a column, a headline. I think you can do it for a column. No, you can't for a column. Sorry. So section, row, and elements. You'll see this little save icon here. You can save this section, give it a name like my section, whatever you want to call it, a description. You can also make it a global block. I would not use this unless it's something that, like for example, a footer. Global block just means that if you make a change, if you save this as a template and you upload it in multiple places, if you make a change to one of those blocks, it's going to update the same change everywhere. So the one use case I usually feel is the most popular for that is if you create your own custom footer and you add it to 1 million pages. Obviously, you don't want to edit one, have to go through and edit all of them if you want to make a couple changes to the footer. So that would be really helpful to be a global block. Most things don't need to be a global block. If you make it a global block, just be aware we don't have a way to switch it back to a regular block. So I found that out the hard way. So just make sure you need it if it's global block. I'm going to save it. So if you save a section, let's say I'm going to add a new section down here, add section. You can actually go to your saved blocks option here and find the one that you saved. So it's got a whole bunch of other blocks. You'll see if they're global, they show up here. Whole bunch of other blocks as well. This is the one that I added here, my section, boom. And now I can upload it. I click on it and now it's uploaded, right? So that's to help you not have to recreate sections 1 million times. We also implemented this new feature. I wanted to touch on this really quick called copy to clipboard, okay? So if you hover over anything really, I think even a column also has this option. I can't really see on the column this time, but no, column doesn't. Man, the column is just missing out. So the row And the section and the elements have this little thing called copy to clipboard. So if I want to duplicate this on the page, similar to saving it as a block, let's say I want to save this particular image. So I click on copy to clipboard, and then let's say I add a new element because it's an element, right? So down here, I want the image to show up as well. I can add the element down here, and now you'll see this icon for the clipboard in the top right corner right here. And I can paste what I copied so that it shows up here too. But obviously you'll have to adjust the settings accordingly. Okay, so that's just another thing. You can do that for sections. You can do that for rows as well to just make it easier for you. Last thing I want to talk about is responsive mode. So everything that I've been doing here is technically in desktop. Obviously it doesn't look great, but we can pretend it does. So let's say you want to make sure everything looks good on different devices, right? So we've got these little things up here that show tablet and then up here that show mobile. So you will have to adjust some things based on what they look like up here. Like let's say I look here and I'm like, ooh, this doesn't look that great on mobile. Most things are the same, like if you're dragging and dropping, I think, Anne, you were asking about the element gaps or the row gaps. You can adjust them on the page even if you're in mobile device mode, right? But you're gonna have to make some changes, and I wanna just talk about responsive mode quickly. So what we have here is this thing called responsive mode, meaning that when you're in tablet mode or mobile mode and you make changes, we actually don't make those changes affect the desktop or affect the other devices. So if I make a change in tablet in responsive mode, it won't affect anything in desktop. So you can actually be in tablet and make changes and it won't affect it. That's the best thing. Now, caveat to this, and this is something I also learned the hard way. You have to make the changes so if I'm in tablet and I don't want the changes I make here to affect desktop or to affect mobile, okay? I need to make the changes over here in the settings. If I drag and drop something here, or I delete a column, I add another element, all of those changes that I make here, even if I adjust an image size, I found that out also the hard way. If I adjust an image size here on the page, dragging, that is going to make the change in desktop, okay? It's gonna make the change in mobile. Versus if I adjust the width of the image over here in the settings, it will not affect desktop or mobile, okay? So that is something that you have to keep in mind. You wanna adjust everything on the settings when you're in responsive mode, because then it will not affect the other sections. And we didn't have that option on the old builder, unfortunately. So if you're making changes in another way, it was affecting your desktop again, and then you had to go back and fix it, and it was a whole thing. So anything that you adjust on the right side, like let's say I adjust the section settings, all of these things, if I adjust them here in tablet, these are only going to affect tablet, and same with mobile, okay? A couple other quick things about mobile, how it can show up. So if you have things that are like maybe 2 columns, so this row has 2 columns, right? And in desktop, it's not a great example actually. This row, no, let's do this one. It has 3 columns, right? So in desktop, it looks like this. They're side by side, that looks nice. Now if I go to mobile, it stacked them, so they look like this. Now what you can do is you can click on the section settings. I'm gonna go back to the section settings. And in mobile, on the right side, no, where is it? Stack. I have to find it. It may or may not be in the row. We might have moved it. Let's see here. Go back to the row. Column gap. There we go. So it's the row. So when you go to the row, you're going to see this option called responsive behavior, right? And I'm in mobile view. I can choose to make these columns stacked, or I can stack them in a different order, reversed order, or none. When I choose none, it's slow, but it's going to put the columns side by side instead. And it actually looks a lot better when I have images that are a better example, but it'll put them side by side and remove that stacked option. So that's another way to kind of customize your mobile view when things stack on top of each other using the responsive behavior option here in the row, okay? Yeah, it's not really loading right now. I don't know what's going on, but let's see. Thank you. I spent so long trying to figure out how to do that. Oh, I'm so glad that's helpful. Delaney responds, whoa, that's great. Yes. Can you even switch the order of section, rows, elements, and have it not appear in the other modes? Learn the hard way. Yeah, I'll show you how to do that. Just joined from Norway. We recorded. Nina, it's so good to see you. Yes, don't worry about it. We've recorded this, and we have it already in the workshop place, community workshops. And I'll link that here. But yeah, we'll definitely be able to, you'll be able to watch it later. And I'll be sending the recording or trying to put it there. I think we're going to replace it. Really quickly, one thing I did want to touch on, Nikki, because that's a really good point. So if I go back here, so this is the great thing about the responsive mode is that you don't have to really worry so much about the changes you're making, but there may still be some changes that need to be made. Like I need to add a section and I only want this section to show up on mobile and not responsive. But again, if I make the changes here and not in the settings, it's going to affect everything. So if you need anything to show up just on one device or one or two devices or something like that, you always have the option. So the way that you can do that is you can hover on the right side here. If you go out and you see this list of sections, rows, columns, and elements, you can hover over whatever you want to block from another device, and you can choose to make it only available on desktop or only available on tablet or only available on mobile. And just keep in mind that if you restrict based on a device, we will only show it on the preview as well, right? So we won't show it on the actual device, depending on which preview you're looking at. So that's another option that you can do. Sometimes if you have a specific section that you need to duplicate, you could duplicate it 3 times, make one available on desktop, one available on tablet, one available on mobile. Again, responsive mode is going to help you not have to do that for everything, but every once in a while you might find that you do need to make changes here that you don't want to affect another device. I would follow that process if you need to. That's amazing. Yes, awesome. Okay, guys, so we covered a lot. I just wanted to make sure we went through as many things as possible. But I do want to open the floor if there are any questions, just because I know it was a lot of things. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and then let you guys, and you're free to go too if you need to, no problem. But I just want to make sure that we've covered your questions. So feel free to raise your hand. Maybe we'll have 5 minutes. If there's anything burning that you haven't asked yet, just want to give you guys some space to do that. Valerie says, thank you. Yay, I'm so happy about that. Woohoo. So glad this was helpful, guys. Awesome, awesome. Thanks. Yep, no problem, guys. I'm glad you joined. Oh my gosh, I love it. Just gonna monitor those participants. So helpful, thank you so much. Yay! Oh, well, this is good. I'm glad there's feedback that this is helping. And you guys will be able to watch these recordings later as well. So hopefully that should give you some tips too. All right. Okay, well, if there's no other feedback or questions or anything that you have, then we will go ahead and end it here. Again, you'll be able to watch the recording in the workshop. And actually what I'm gonna do, the list of workshops, I'm gonna drop it in the chat here for any of you guys who are still here. Hopefully it will load, but essentially you can go to our community. If it loads, I'll drop it in the chat. Essentially you can go to our community, simplero.community site. If you haven't joined yet, please join. You have a Simplero account, it's free. Calvin's in there all the time, updating everyone about what he is making changes on in the platform. Simplero.community, and you'll see on the left side, we have recordings. So there we go. Okay, sorry, I'm just waiting for it to load here. Let me go ahead and snag that for you guys. Course directory. We've got all these workshops that you guys can use as well. Actually, you know what's so funny? It's in the help site. Boom. Okay, training workshops. There we go. All right, I'm gonna drop that in the chat right here. Okay, so we've got also one version of this workshop there that you guys can go back and watch if you need it. Again, if you have any other questions, please open a support ticket so we can keep answering them and hear what you guys are needing. All right, it's good to see you all. Gonna end it here. Have a good weekend. Bye.